that's about as much as I'm going to say for this moment and call up Chief Dotson. But before we get started, I'm going to lay just a couple of ground rules. I am here and agreed to be here because what I'm interested in is two things, and that's peace and progress. And I understand that people are angry, that there's a lot of feelings involved. There's a lot of passion around this topic and the topics that we'll be discussing tonight. And I'm asking you to be as respectful as possible to one another, to remember, as last time if you were here, I kind of put you in that safe space. I want to get that back tonight, make sure that we stay there and that we're comfortable sharing what we need to share, but respecting each other's ideas around those things. And with the questions that you ask, please keep in mind that the goal is progress, the goal is peace, is to move us forward. Megan and I were talking today, and I said, there's a difference between anger and rage. If you call OKB MAD, 314-OKB MAD, you're going to get our hotline. That's actually our hotline. And if anyone can tell you it's okay to be angry, it's us. And we understand why people are angry, but that's different than rage. Anger can be very motivating. It can be something that can seed change and social growth. Rage is a little bit different. And so I'm hoping what we will see tonight is honesty. If you're angry, that you're coming out of this from a place of wanting to move forward, of wanting to grow as a community. So come on up, and I will. What I'm going to be serving to do is in every way possible help facilitate the questions. If there's something that I can shed light on in terms of, again, that bridge between understanding the criminal justice system, but also understanding the victim's needs, I'm going to serve you by doing that. So, yeah. Do you want to say anything before we get started?
Very quickly, just quick minutes. Hey, I appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to you. When the Alderwoman asked me, it was an immediate yes. There was no hesitation, because I think this is what our community needs. It needs this conversation. It needs this dialogue. I need to understand your perspective better. You need to understand my perspective, and we need to be able to leave here hopefully ready to move forward a little bit in this big conversation in August. The narrative that started in August is not finished yet, and we all have a chance to impact it. Law enforcement does, communities do, politicians do, and the only way that we're going to get it right is if we work together and we have conversation and we talk. Do we do everything right? Absolutely not. Does the community do everything right? Absolutely not. So we learn from our mistakes together. I want to introduce a couple of people that are here just so you know who's in the room with me, and then we'll just start with questions, and we'll go for an hour and a half or something like that to do it. So first I want to introduce Major Jerry Layshot. He is the commander of community policing. So all of the uniformed officers that you see throughout the city right now report to Major Layshot. Major Jones Rochelle Jones is the commander of South Patrol. So she has the 1st and 2nd police districts. So really everything from 44 South, really Shoto South at a couple of places. Bill Swiderski is the captain of the 2nd district. Just for reference, everything west of Grand is going to be Captain Swiderski's. Mary Warnicki is the captain of the 3rd district. Everything east of Grand is going to be Mary's, just for point of reference. Steve Dodge helps us with our operations in the police department, and I saw Joe Calabro and a couple of other officers. I also want to thank the other elected officials that are here. I saw Representative Colonna, thank you. Alderman Conway, thank you. Alderwoman Gracia, I saw, there you are. And if I missed anybody else, I'm sorry, I didn't see you come in. So I'll be happy to lead.
So I think if anyone wants to get started with a question of maybe the concerns that you have around anything that you've seen in the last couple of months since the initial shooting of Michael Brown, and then of course the subsequent activities that have happened since then, whether it be through your own experiences or the experiences of your community. All right, ready?
I work with local police department on doing social justice trainings with our officers on LGBT issues. And I'm curious what trainings or staff do you go through to address bias, implicit bias, outright bias, and how often do they go through this?
So we do, not enough. So just in October, before it started in May, so before Michael Brown, in October, I took the entire command staff through implicit bias training. We had not gone through implicit bias training as an organization before, so it was a new experience for us. And I took senior command staff and the captains through that. We're going to roll it out to the rest of the department over the next year in 15. We do bias training And I'll be honest with you, as required by the Post Commission, by the police officers training standard, is it enough? No, absolutely it's not. And so we're looking at broadening that. Probably like every other police agency, training has become kind of perfunctory, kind of rudiment. You go through it. I'm challenging my academy and my training people now to come up with meaningful training, whether it's around racial profiling, implicit bias, de-escalation, all of those, because I think we can do better. It takes a little bit of an investment, part not only in time but in money, but we're going to do it. So implicit bias, just within the last month, believe it or not, we have EOC training with the federal government on next Thursday. Try and make us aware of it. All of these things were scheduled beforehand, but we are.
All hail the queen of the center of the universe.
Okay.
So does that, we have, but not enough, and we're going to do more. And yes, more, yes.
I have.
And I'm going to add to that just a little bit about training as sort of that civilian arm of victim and community service. We are always watchdogs for that as well. So we do some training with the officers. We're probably going to do more. I have a meeting tomorrow with the Anti-Defamation League to look at some further training. So it's, yeah, this all has come up very quickly in the last couple of months, and we're trying to figure out what our response is. Give me first, so we can make sure you guys are linked in. Okay.
Excuse me.
With all the extra training that's inevitably required of the city street, you're going to need more officers on the street because they're going to be tied up X number more hours per security.
And that's when I answered her question. I said it's going to take a commitment on our part. So you may have heard that Mayor Saleh has asked for 160 new police officers. For the last, just to kind of give the context, for the last 20 years around the country, crime has been in a decrease. Crime doesn't go down in a straight line, it doesn't go up in a straight line, it goes in a squiggly line, but the overall trend for the last 20 years has been in a downward pattern. And for the last couple of years, law enforcement has been saying, okay, where's the bottom, where are we going to level out? But as we were doing that, police agencies around the country were reducing in size. Even that being said, since 2006, crime is down 50% in the city. We may have hit that plateau now and need to start to increase our staffing. So we've asked for 160 new officers over 2 years. Address crime, fill backfill, and the easiest way for me to do it though is with overtime. So if, let's say we take 50 officers today to training, I pay some number of officers overtime to backfill. So there's always a cost associated with it, whether it's people, hours, or money.
I'm gonna go.
So with this training, this implicit bias training, are you keeping data on how many of your staff have these biases, so you can know what you're dealing with in your department?
So if I understand your question right, I'm just going to answer that. Do we have data to know who has what prejudice or bias? I don't know how to quantify that. And so I know who goes to the training, but the implicit bias is is how you're programmed growing up about the subconscious things that you do that go into your thought process. I don't know how to quantify it. I'm asking a question. I don't know how to quantify that to keep track to say that Sam Dotson has a sensitivity against blue dogs. I don't know how to keep that kind of data. So I don't understand. I don't know if I understand your question.
So you get the results back and it tells you whether or not they have bias for whatever it is.
Oh, no. So let's talk about the training. The training is to make people aware. It's not a standardized test for
I
people.
know what it is, I've taken it. So it gives you your results and tells you whether or not.
No.
And maybe we're doing a different version. Khatib Wahid and Judge David Mason from Juvenile Court took us through this. So if that's a tool that you have, we didn't do it. We approached it from a different way. So
why aren't you doing it?
I'm sorry.
So
Why aren't you evaluating your
Right.
officers? Just because you don't know of it, they do exist.
Okay, and so, as you said at the very beginning, this is a learning time for me too to take things back. So I said 17 seconds ago that I didn't know something existed. So if you're asking me why I haven't done it, can I at least do a little research on it first?
I'd like to hear what the results of that research are too.
I have a question.
Are there metrics that you're using to see if the training is effective, if there's changes?
So what we do is, and the easiest way to use it to amplify this is the racial profiling data that every agency in the state is required to collect. And so we take that data and we're required to report it to the Attorney General's office, but there is no requirement to do an analysis on it. So we contract with the University of Missouri at St. Louis, Rick Rosenfeld, to do an analysis of our data around racial profiling to see if there are outliers. So in that scenario, I know I do have a metric, and I can know if we're doing. I didn't know about a metric and implicit bias. I'll look into it. So the one area that I do, and if we identify people that are outside an outlier, then we give them additional training to bring them back into line. And so we've done that with our 2012 data. We have a contract with Rick Rosenfeld to do 2013 data, and when 2014 is done, we'll do 2015. So we'll have year-over-year comparisons to see if we're making progress.
I have.
Gentleman back here is for question.
Chief Dotson, there are experts in this field. They're called anthropologists. Do you have any on staff? And do you plan to get some?
Well, I'd be happy to hire an anthropologist if I could hire more police officers to keep us safe. So that's why we rely on the universities to do some of that work.
You're working with the criminology department, right?
At UMSL, yes.
Yeah, that's different from the anthropology department. The anthropology department comes at it from a completely different standpoint. The criminology department is not going to be sufficient to get your police officers the understanding they need about race. It's just not going to work. Race is the domain of anthropology.
I have a question.
That's a good suggestion, because I do know where you're coming from, and it's the anthropologists that have designed a lot of those very tests.
I have.
And I can help you with that.
I have a question.
Gentleman in the back.
Yes, just two questions. I was wondering if you can describe the elements inside of pepper spray and tear gas. What is the proper procedure when it comes to first aid if you're actually sprayed by some? And how could you assure people who are not involved, or people involved, that you are going to provide safety for general safety for everyone involved? And I was looking on your website, and I see your stats, crime stats. You publish in terms of internal review board, a punisher who's exonerated, but I don't see like specific like police shootings data. You don't. Is there a way you could separate?
There's an annual report that, to take your last question, there is an annual report that summarizes that. So if you look for the annual report, inside of that is a tab on.
Okay, I'll look for it. But my other question is about.
From the St. Louis.
Correct. Yeah.
Could you answer my other questions as well?
So I'm not a chemist, so the easiest answer to your question about OC spray, pepper spray, which is the product that every officer carries on their CS gas, water.
Okay.
Water will dilute that. So, and there are no studies that I know of that have any long-term effects with either of those products or short-term effects outside of the immediate.
Okay.
So, while it's a valid question, none of the studies that we see. And if there was a product that did have that long-term issue associated with it, we wouldn't use it.
Okay.
Because just as I wouldn't want to do that because it's not the right thing to do. So water will dilute the OC spray. Water will dilute the CS gas.
The studies
Okay.
are on healthy adults, just
So did I get all of your questions?
Yes, and I was just wanting to know about the general safety. Well, I just want to know, could you let the general populace know you are out to provide general safety of people as well?
And I don't know how I could say it any better. Our job is to keep people safe. That's what we do. And so when you heard the Unified Command talking about their goals well before Bob McCullough's announcement, so the first one is always life safety, keeping people safe. If we don't do that, we fail at our mission. We fail at our job. And I think that's a terrible metric to use, but that's a metric that is out there. Just to contrast and compare, LA, early 90s, over 50 people lost their life during their civil disobedience. Cincinnati, 2001, over 30 people. If I heard correctly, just tonight there was a police officer involved shooting in Berkeley, California tonight. So if our number one goal is to try and keep people safe, not the best metric, but a metric, for the last 4 months, we've tried to do that, and I thought we've done it well. Second is preserve
If I can
property.
comment on that, my name is
Second
Dr.
is to preserve property. And so we have said that we wanted to do the best job that we could to keep property safe and intact. And with limited exceptions of 21 businesses on Grand Avenue that lost their windows, some and a church and a resident on Flora Place and several cars, I thought we had done a relatively good job of that too. It made me sick to watch those 21 businesses lose their windows on Grand Avenue. And the third one is to preserve people's constitutional rights to come together peacefully to have their voices heard.
If I could comment on that.
Hold on, I'm gonna ask a question about well, actually, you had a clarifying statement, and then I'm going to go to your question, but before I do those two things, what I want to ask you to think about is, all of us are new to this. This is a very new experience to all of St. Louis. I was trying to think today of any other riots we've had in at least my lifetime, and I couldn't think of any. In my lifetime. No, it wasn't right. But even, well, and remember though that the collective thought around this was, what if there's riots? I mean, that because of what we saw happening in Ferguson. So there was a collective fear that was there. Real or not, it was there. And we have to acknowledge that. And so one of the things I was trying to remember today is if we have dealt with this as a community before, and if we have to do it all the time. And my point in that is there are lessons being learned on both sides. And so the only thing I want to make sure that we're doing while we're asking these questions and trying to move forward is what we would do differently the next time. And any suggestions you might have for the police department that we would do differently next time.
Do it differently the next time. Don't keep
What? Right, but, okay, so let's,
My name is Dr. Mary Beth Rice. I was the one physician that was present when both of these were staff. There were multiple other medics that were present, at least one registered nurse that I'm aware of. I do have a question for you, sir, but I have a point I'd also like to make, and that is I don't believe that the police department had any can't deny how intentional or unintentional and we did the best that we could at that point in time, as far as I'm aware, everyone was okay except for the psychological trauma that happened to me. But my question to you would be, if in fact someone were seriously injured, if in fact someone was having an asthma attack in their corner, how exactly would emergency personnel be able to get into that type of situation if the roads have been closed down? How exactly would we be expected to manage that if there weren't volunteer personnel on site?
I'll give you two. That's a great question. I'll give you two examples of that. There was a protest at Keener Plaza at the last Rams game. In the middle of the protest, a woman started to have a seizure. And to everybody's credit, law enforcement and the public that was there, everybody stopped and immediately went and rendered aid to her. For your question about on Grand Avenue specifically, we traveled with 2 EMS units. And so there were 2 EMS units within about a 30-second response. They were so close, actually, that one of those EMS units took gunfire and has bullet holes in it. So there were medics within 30 seconds of where we were and able to respond had there been a true medical emergency that we were made aware of. So and just for context, I just want to have a conversation with you. And so when I say something, I just hope you listen to me, and then I'm going to listen to you, and we'll do it. No police chief ever wants to get into a situation where we have to deploy CSKs. You just don't want to do it. When we got into that situation after the window smashings and the fires, we made sure that we had the support that we needed there, the EMS units. We tried to give everybody an exit. We tried to make sure that everybody knew that it was time to leave the area because we're trying to bring it back under control. Because you have to remember, while we're in our little ecosystem here on South Grand, there's a whole other ecosystem going on in Ferguson. And what we are seeing in Ferguson is entire blocks and businesses being burned, cars being burned. So we had some of those elements here, and we're just talking about similarities right now. Highway closure, window smashings, trash can fires. It was escalating and going that way. So this ecosystem's going on over here. We're aware of it. We have some of the similar situations here. None of us wanted to see that in our neighborhood. But when we do respond, we bring the resources that we need with us.
I do have a question actually. Facilitation. I feel like everyone really wants to talk about the police, so like should we just talk about it?
Absolutely.
Well, I have a totally different question, so I would love to ask it later, but I feel like
No, you should ask
we
it
all
now.
wanna
Okay.
talk about
There
it.
won't be a
Okay.
later.
Okay, that's fine, that's fine, okay. So I am not as familiar with what happened in Mocha because there's people in here who were there that evening. Megan has filled me in on a little bit of it. You wanna say something about it?
Well, I saw the whole thing from beginning to end, really.
You what, I'm sorry.
I saw the whole thing.
Okay.
I was on South
Okay.
Grand when the tear gas was deployed, and
Okay.
I was there for the multiple.
So what I wanna know.
So
from
was I,
you-
by the way. That's okay.
So what I wanna know from you is what you saw, what you smelled, what you felt. I want you to take us through it in a descriptive way.
After the, I guess the stand-up and the police line, the riot police had formed a line on Arsenal. After that down and all that had been resolved, most people actually moved back into those and warm up, just kind of, but I went along South Grand, and that's where people had started smashing windows, and that proceeded for, I would say, around 20 minutes, with police officers in plain view, just kind of very, I would say, like not even a quarter of a block north of Arsenal and Grand, watching all of it. Until there, I guess, was a moment when you guys decided that was enough, but basically, tear gas was then deployed and everyone started running north on Grand. Everyone started running north on Grand and then into Mokabees because people knew that it was a safe space.
Everyone not being the people who were, are we talking about people who were breaking windows or the people who were on the street?
Well, the people who were on the street, yeah. I mean, basically, just any bystander was moving towards Mokabees. That's when the tank deploying.
It's an armored car. It's an armored car. We do not own a tank, just for the record.
They shot around 3 canisters, from what I remember, on South Grand specifically. But then they shot, I would say, 3 canisters directly at Mokabees. And I say that because there was a canister actually like on the doorstep of Mokabees, and then one had ricocheted off of the building. And then we tried to move everyone inside. But most of that gas got actually into Mokabees because people were trying to get in there. That's when Dr. Bryce and I.
People tried to make the exit through the back.
Through the back.
Where
And
there was more
there was
shots
around
taken.
like, I would say like a 5 or 6 minute pause.
Into the back.
And then tear gas was deployed into the back alley, and then
People
everyone
were
was
literally trapped inside.
trapped
So when you say
inside.
shots being fired, you mean gunfire, correct?
No, these
Or-
were tear gas.
Oh, tear
So
gas,
there was-
okay,
there
that's
was-
why I'm making the distinction.
No, we didn't hear,
Okay.
there was no
Okay.
gunfire that we heard at least.
Okay, when you say shots, that's why I have to clarify that, okay.
So then there was a good, I would say around 10-minute pause between people just trying to clear their eyes out, shifting people around Mokabees because the main room had pretty much been tear gas, and anyone in there was pretty much rendered, incapable of like seeing or breathing. Lots of people, like Dr. Rice said, were having asthma attacks. Lots of people were vomiting. Pretty much just a lot of chaos. But then when people had kind of gained their bearings and then were trying to leave again, that's when more tear gas was deployed out front. And then we were pretty much too afraid to leave. And that's when the tear gas cleared, was when we saw your line of officers had assembled out in front of Mokabees and were not letting anyone leave. I believe someone tried to leave past their escape route, tried to exit Mokabees and proceed west on Arsenal, but they were arrested. And so none of us wanted to leave. That's when we sent out one of the lawyers that had been inside to negotiate with whoever was part of your line of police. And then we had to file out the buildings that we had in here. That's I remember them.
And there's some commonalities between, like, there are also other things that are going on that you don't know about. So, in no particular order, I'm going to try and take it. I don't disagree with you that we deploy gas. What I was we talked about the officers that were there trying to restore peace. And also, were you at the Ferguson Commission on Monday?
I was at the Ferguson Commission.
Did
on
anybody
Monday.
let me have a chance to talk Monday night?
Did
You have lost your chance.
You said you were protecting the right people.
You did.
What the fuck do you expect me to say that?
And all of this, like, there's people are willing to give you leeway when they feel like they can trust you, and I think that they have done that for a very long time. But in the last few months, people don't trust you, and not just people of color, not just black and brown people, but white people in this community as well. And you have to take a different tactic, if only from a PR stance, to be able, if only for that reason, to recognize, like, hey, some things have gone wrong, and we're going to address those, not just in a, like, I'm protecting my ass sort of way, but in, like, a, hey, like, this is something that we're actually dealing with here, and the community feels like you're being honest, and not snarky to them, and not snarky to all of those of us who got tear gas at Mokabees. When you make a comment in the Riverfront Times that says Mokabees wants to think that they're the center of the universe, and that did not happen when we all knew